What's up, guys? Caylen here from Modern Day Sniper, and I want to walk you guys through the gun number process. We're going to incorporate the gun number process into our 4-step wind reading process. Now, gun number is a mile per hour value that's assigned to your rifle with its external ballistics, meaning what kind of bullet you're shooting, how fast you're shooting it, and the altitude at which you're shooting it at, because that has to do with the density of the air and the time of flight. When you go higher up in altitude, your gun number is going to increase. When you go lower in altitude, your gun number is going to decrease. And the same thing is going to happen summertime versus wintertime. Okay. So with that out of the way, where does this full value wind number come from? It's a wind speed that correlates to your ballistics. And usually the way that you can check this is with your ballistic computer program on your phone. You can cruise to your wind settings, whatever program it is that you're using. And for 308s, you're going to be looking at around 4 to 5 miles per hour as your baseline. 6s and 6.5s, depending on what altitude and temperature you're shooting at, you're going to be anywhere from 5 to maybe even 8 miles an hour, somewhere in there. So for my particular 6.5 here, it is a 6-mile-an-hour gun at this altitude. I happen to be at 3,000 feet, and it's about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So what that means is that for every 100 of yards to the target, in this example, I'm shooting at 400 yards. 400 then becomes 0.4. For every 6 miles an hour of full value wind, meaning the wind that's cutting across my line of fire at 90 degrees, that is 100% of whatever the raw wind speed is. We're going to take 7 miles an hour, and at 400 yards, I need 0.4 mils of correction. Okay, so you can easily find this in your ballistic data by just looking for patterns. And it's most likely going to work for you out to about 700 yards, maybe 800, depending on what your velocities and how everything lines up. What you're going to do is you're going to increase or decrease your wind speed so that at 600 yards, your wind correction equals 0.6 mils. Now, if you're an MOA shooter, everything is going to be divided in half. So at 600 yards, you want to be at 3 MOA instead of 0.6 mils. So if you're at 400 yards, you're going to be at 2 MOA. And if you're at 700 yards, you're going to be at 3.5 MOA. So that's a real easy way to do the MOA conversion. Now, a hint for you guys that are MOA shooters, you're going to have higher wind speeds. It's just the way that the math works out. So you might need to be starting off at 8 and maybe end up in the 10-mile-an-hour range for a 6.5 Creedmoor or something to that effect ballistically. Now that we have a basic understanding of what the gun number is, how do we actually apply gun number to what we're doing? It's real simple. And the simplicity of this is that inside 700 or 800 yards, I should be able to use gun number to derive a really quick wind correction. And if I have a gun number already memorized, I have at least 2, potentially 3 wind calls. I have the gun number itself, I have half of the gun number, and if I wanted to go up another notch, I could double the gun number or triple it. Now, when we start talking about tripling the gun number, we're moving away from what the true spirit of that formula is for. It's hasty. It's hasty wind readings that are also in turn pretty accurate. The more math that you start doing in your head, the more cognitive load you're putting on yourself, other things are going to start to fall away. And hopefully that's not part of your fundamental marksmanship process, because it's not ideal. The gun number, remember, is a hasty but very accurate way to get a wind call. Now that we understand what gun number is, and if you don't really have it solidified yet, we have a ton of information over at the Modern Day Rifleman Network at moderndayRifleman.com. We have both a bunch of free information. We also have a tremendous amount of information in the Modern Day Rifleman Advantage program, which is our paid subscription service. So if you're unfamiliar with it, cruise over there, see what it is that we got. It's an awesome community of really, really amazing folks that are all like-minded. They don't want to have to deal with any of the nonsense on traditional social media posts or traditional forum posts where people are just rude to one another. Everybody at the Modern Day Rifleman Network just wants to improve, and they want to see everybody around them improve. So if that's your jam, cruise over there and check it out. Okay, so we have an establishment of what gun number is. Now let's walk through our 4-step wind call process. And again, it's really simple. I want to keep things as simple as possible because when we're under stress, simplicity is what's going to get us to solve the problem and accomplish the mission in the most efficient manner. Step one of the wind reading process is to identify your range to the target, right? That's pretty straightforward because the range to the target, that's all about time of flight, and that's what wind is all about. So for this particular engagement, I've got a target at 450 yards. So we're just going to call it either a 0.4 or a 0.5. I'll make that decision when we get closer to it. That is establishing the range to the target. So even if you're using a ballistic computer program, you still have to tell the computer program what the range to the target is in order for it to give you a wind hold. Step number 2 is we're going to identify what the raw wind speed is. And what I mean by raw wind speed is we're going to take a Kestrel or some other method of reading the wind. Maybe your intuition is set so that way you can have really good sensory awareness and say, okay, that's what a 5 mile an hour wind feels like. Okay, so we've got our Kestrel and we're going to read the wind speed. Now the raw wind speed, I don't care what direction the wind's coming from other than I want to make sure that I know exactly what it is. So I'm going to find out where the wind's coming from and I'm going to put my Kestrel right into it. I'm going to figure out what that wind speed is. And so right now I am getting a 5.5 mile an hour wind, and that's fluctuating from about 7. That gust will probably take it up to 10. Yep, 9.8, 7.4. So now I can start to feel and hear what that wind is. And that's going to play a big role in adjusting my wind call when I actually get there and I'm aiming at the target. So right now, I'm going to take that raw wind speed value, or that raw wind speed, at 6 miles an hour average, okay? So I'm at my gun number. That's kind of cool because that makes the math really, really simple. All right? So step 1, identify range to the target. Step 2, identify the raw wind speed. We're then going to convert the raw wind speed into a working wind speed. And now that's going to come into the wind value. I'm sure many of you guys have seen a wind rose out there where we start off. 12 o'clock is always the direction of fire, or 0 degrees. And as we start moving from 0 degrees to 90, right, which would be a 90-degree perpendicular right angle to our line of fire, that direction is going to be 100% of the raw wind speed value. So in this case, 6 miles an hour. If it were blowing true 90 degrees to my direction of fire, that's going to have a full 6 mile an hour effect on my projectile. Now, if the wind is 30 degrees from 12 o'clock, which would be 1 o'clock position, we're going to call that, actually at 60 degrees from full 90, we're going to call that a 50% value. So if the wind were coming from 1 o'clock, I would take that 6 miles an hour and cut it in half, and now I'm dealing with a 3 mile an hour full value wind. Now, if the wind was coming from the 2 o'clock position, which would be 30 degrees, there we would have a cosine of 30 degrees is 0.86. And so we're going to say that's 90%. We're going to take 0.86 and turn it into a percentage. We're just going to round it up a little bit because that's way easier math. We're going to come up with 90%. So if I had a 6 mile an hour wind and it's blowing from 2 o'clock or an opposite thereof on the clock face, it's only going to have the equivalent of 90% of 6 miles an hour, so just call it 5. So that is step 3. We're going to convert the raw to the working. Now in this particular scenario, the wind is pretty much cutting across 90 degrees. So you can figure this out real easy. A lot of times at shooting matches, you're going to see guys have little tethers on their tripods to show them what the wind direction is. Or you can use a little puff bottle here, which is a pretty easy way to do it. Put it into the wind, make sure it's in clean wind. And I'm going to say that that's probably anywhere from 90 to 75%. So in this particular example here, I'm going to take that 6 miles an hour wind and I'm probably going to hold for a 4 mile an hour wind. Okay. And we're going to turn on the trigger cam so that way you guys can see the reticle and see how I bracket the target. Because the next step number 4, is to then derive and apply the hold. So in this case, 400 yards, every 6 miles an hour is 0.4 mils. I'm going to hold for a 4 mile an hour wind because I'm converting my raw to a working, and the working wind speed is 4 miles an hour because that 6 is coming from 2 o'clock, between 2 o'clock and, 75%, right? That 45-degree angle. So I'm going to hold for a 4. But what that means is I'm going to be holding just a little bit less than 0.4, which is most likely going to be right around 0.3 mils. All right, so we're going to use the trigger cam here to show you guys what bracketing wind looks like. So we started off with saying, hey, we got a 6-mile-an-hour wind coming from 2 o'clock, and it's kind of on, it's off, the wind's coming in little burps of air, if you want to call it that. So this target at 450 yards, I've got my dope dialed, and I'm going to show you guys in the trigger cam what 6 miles an hour of wind would look like in a hold. Okay, so if I get into my rifle, okay, you guys got the target right there. 4/10, let's zoom in so you guys can see. So 4/10 is 6 miles an hour. And I just don't see or feel 6 miles an hour out there at all. So I do know that there's at least a little bit of wind, okay? So if it's not 6, maybe it's 3. There's still 2/10 worth of wind that I need to account for with 3 miles an hour, even at this range. So let's look at what 2/10 looks like. Our target is a 1/2 mil wide. So that target, I've only got about 3, maybe 4 miles an hour worth of wind budget on that target if I'm holding center. So we're going to make an educated guess here, and I'm going to say that I need at least 2/10 worth of wind to the right to hit center on that target. Let's see if my guess is correct. I'm going to back off the magnification so that way we can see the recoil and you guys can see the target get impacted. All right, here's 2/10. Okay. Let's see one more shot at 2/10. It might be impacting a little downwind. I'm detecting just a little bit of left wobble. So let's increase it to 3/10 and see what the reaction on the target is. I feel some more wind coming. Yeah, 3/10 is far more center. So let's go 4/10 and see if we're off the plate or if we're going to rock it hard to the right. Yep, 4/10 is too much. So 4/10 took me right off the right edge of the plate. So if I hit with 3, but 4 is too much, that means I'm still holding a little heavy into the wind. Feel some wind come back up. Two-tenths. One more at 2. That's it, 2/10. So what does that tell me? Well, the target just told me, if I do the back calculation, the target just told me that there is at least 3 miles an hour worth of wind out there, regardless of where it's coming from. It doesn't matter if the direction is whatever or the speed is whatever. All I know is that the combination of speed and direction is telling me that there's 3 miles an hour worth of wind in this direction that I need to account for. So if I had a target at 500 yards or 600 yards, I would carry that data out to those targets because that's the last known data that got me the result that I'm looking for. So once you're done with that 4-step wind call process, the real good plan for you is to reverse engineer what you just experienced on the target to give you that raw or that final wind speed number that you need to hold for the rest of the targets that you have to shoot. I hope you guys got something from that little short video on gun number and our 4-step wind reading process. If you guys want to learn more, make sure you cruise over to the Modern Day Rifleman Network like we talked about earlier. It's got a mountain of information in there, and we hope to see you. Come join us, and we'll talk to you.